Welcome to the broadcast, Finding Scholarships and Grants. Thanks for joining my webinar today. We'll be talking about different types of scholarships, both merit and need-based. We'll also be talking about some federal and state financial aid that you could qualify for. We'll talk a little bit about financial aid basics and where to find scholarships. We'll also be talking about how to find private scholarships and what to put on these applications and some interview tips. Plus, I'll be sharing a lot of CFNC tools and website information. Well, when we're talking about scholarships, there are lots of different types of scholarships. And believe it or not, there are even scholarships for younger students or students who are not seniors in high school. And these scholarships can either be merit-based or need-based. We're going to talk first of all about merit-based scholarships. Now, most of these are going to be based on something, or all of these are going to be based on something that the student brings to the table. For example, SAT or ACT scores, could be high grades. A lot of these are due in the fall of the senior year in high school. Merit-based scholarships can also be given for a type of community service that a student has done, or a talent, art, music, could be a sport, or a student might be an ROTC, or some other type of activity or club. Could also be around a specific career goal that the student might have. Other characteristics for merit-based scholarships could be race, gender. There are some scholarships out there just for girls or some just for boys. They can also be based on a disability that a student might have. And again, a career choice. And then there are lots of other ones out there as well. There's a Red-Haired Club of America, and they have scholarships. There's also a Tall Club of America. So, and again, it's something that the student brings to the table. Now, in North Carolina, we have a merit-based scholarship, and it's called the North Carolina Forgivable Education Loans for Service. And it's actually a loan until the student works in that career field. They sign a promissory note saying that they'll work in that field when they graduate. And this is for students who are thinking about going into certain teaching fields, also nursing, allied health, medicine, and there are certain counseling fields as well. This would be $3,000 for a student's freshman and sophomore year, $7,000 for a junior and senior year, $10,000 for master's degree, and $14,000 for doctorates. So it's a pretty good amount of money. If you think you might be interested in that, this comes out every December 1st, and it is also due March 31st. And you can find out more information by going to cfnc.org/FELS. That stands for Forgivable Education Loans for Service. Now, with need-based scholarships, they're always based on a student's financial circumstances. But those financial circumstances might be different for every student. And it might also be different for every scholarship that's out there, these need-based scholarships. For example, a sponsor of a scholarship may say, well, we feel like a family is needy if the family income is less than $50,000. Or another one might say, well, we feel like a family is needy if their income's less than $20,000. And yet another might say, well, we feel like they're needy if their income's less than $100,000. So that could be subjective as to who is giving that scholarship. Now, a lot of need-based aid comes from filling out the FAFSA. And a lot of your need-based scholarships will also want to have your FAFSA results. Your student aid report, they may want a copy of that. They may also want a copy of your expected family contribution. And you get that, of course, by filling out the FAFSA. This is the main homepage of the FAFSA. And you'll get to that by going to FAFSA.gov. And you and your parents will be filling this out and signing this with your FAFSA ID, with your FSA ID. Now, some of the federal aid that you can get by filling out the FAFSA, and this is free money for students, could be a federal Pell Grant. If your expected family contribution is under a certain amount, you can expect to get some Pell money if you need that for college. There's also a supplemental grant, and there's also a Teach grant, and this is actually a merit-based grant for students who know that they want to teach in certain career fields. Otherwise, it becomes a loan. And not all colleges offer the Teach grant. Now, some self-help aid by filling out the FAFSA that students can get is work study. But work study is given, it is need-based, and they'll be looking at your expected family contribution to determine whether or not you can have a work study job on the campus. There are also loans. Subsidized Stafford loans this year had a 5.04 interest rate. Subsidized means the federal government pays the interest on those loans while a student is in college. And unsubsidized means that the students pay the interest on those loans while they are in college. Subsidized, again, that's need-based. Just about all students can qualify for unsubsidized loans, but not everybody can qualify for subsidized loans. Then there are also parent loans as well. And if a parent has good credit, then a parent is able to get a parent loan. And this year, they have a 7.6% interest rate, which is pretty high. And there are some other loans that might be lower. North Carolina has a new North Carolina Assist loan that has a much lower interest rate than that. So if you're in a family where you have a parent who is thinking, I'm going to need to get a parent loan, you may want to look around and look at the North Carolina Assist for that. Now, these are North Carolina need-based programs, and again, these are based on your FAFSA results as well. UNC need-based grant for students who are going to one of the 16 public institutions. There's a community college grant. Need-based scholarship for students attending private colleges in North Carolina. And then there's the North Carolina Lottery Scholarship. And of course, this is available only at public campuses in North Carolina. And in order to get North Carolina money, all students must complete a residency determination. And students do that by going to ncresidency.org, or you can go through the CFNC site as well, and you'll use your CFNC username and password to fill out that residency determination. On CFNC, there's a Pay tab, and on this Pay tab, there are lots of scholarships that students can apply for in North Carolina. Now, a student will have to go through here. This is the unfortunate thing. There are some filters up at the top where it says list of scholarships for students with special needs, programs for military, programs for graduates and professional students, and the forgivable loans for service. And then there's also lots of other ones down here. So a student will need to look through those and see what they qualify for. Now, there's also 2 financial literacy scholarships on CFNC for students who complete financial basics. It's a pretty neat little course that a student can take. It takes probably 1 to 2 hours to complete the course. And then a student is registered to win one of 2 $500 scholarships. Another place to look for scholarships that not a lot of people know about is looking at the professional organizations that are attached to a specific career that the student is going into. And you can find those on CFNC. And I chose aerospace engineer. And you can see the professional organizations that are linked to those. But a lot of them offer scholarships, and they don't advertise for these. A student is just supposed to know that to go into these websites, go into these association websites, look around. Sometimes they'll let students join these organizations when they're in high school or college. And a lot of them also offer paid internships in the summertime, which is a really great way to get a foot in the door if you're thinking about a specific career out there. Now, you will not find all the organizations under CFNC. I usually recommend to students that when you go to visit your colleges or when you're going to your open houses, your orientations, talk with the department chairs and talk with your professors or your teachers at these colleges and find out what professional organizations they belong to. A lot of times they don't even know to let students know that there are certain scholarships or that students can join these. So it's a good way to find some extra scholarship money without a lot of competition. So besides CFNC, where else can you find scholarships? I wish I could tell you all the times in my life that I've done a financial aid workshop and someone has come up afterwards and said, with a pen and paper and said, tell me where I can find all the scholarships that are out there. Give me one website where I can find all of those. Unfortunately, there is not one website. But I will tell you, your number one place to find scholarships is through your high school or your high school counselor or your college access advisor or your college, wherever you are going to school or planning to go to school. These are your best resources. And your local scholarships, where you actually live, they want to fund local students. The people that give these scholarships in your area, they want to fund local students. So you have a better chance of getting these. I will tell you, you should never, ever, ever pay for scholarship information. If you get something via email, you get something via snail mail that says, give us this amount of money, we'll guarantee you a certain amount. Those are all scams. Another scam that's out there is we'll put you in for these scholarships and we're going to let you be in this who's who list and it'll look great on your college applications and your resume for $75. And I'm going to tell you right now, your colleges don't care about those things. So don't spend any money if it has to do with scholarships. Going back to private scholarships, places to look for those, besides your counselor, talk with your parents' employers. If you are employed, talk with your employer and see if they have any. Your church. I met a student who had a Baptist scholarship a few years ago, and she was getting $1,000 a year. Your civic organizations, your Kiwanis, your Ruritans, your Rotary clubs, your community foundations. Many communities have these foundations. I'm from here in Western North Carolina, and we have a community foundation of Western North Carolina, and they only want to fund students in the western part of the state. And you may have the same thing wherever you live. Also, your college booster clubs, your alumni associations. If your parents attended college, find out if they might have some scholarships. Other places to find scholarships, of course, the college or university you plan to attend. Be sure to find out what their scholarship policies are. Some, if you apply to that college, they automatically put you in for all of their scholarships. And some, you have to fill out another form. And some people don't know to even ask about that, and they might miss important deadlines. A lot of them are in the fall. So if you haven't done that, if you're planning to attend college in the fall, and you haven't talked with your college about their scholarships, you need to do that as quickly as possible. Or go on their website and see what you can find. Other places, of course, your department heads, your financial aid office at whatever college you're planning to attend. There are some common places to find. Some of your national sites. There's College Board, Student Aid. I've had students that have said they found things on KPEX or MyScholarly. And again, these are national scholarship sites, and so you're going to be competing against lots of students for these scholarships. I also tell people to please put it out on your social media. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, let people know that you're looking for scholarships. Tell them what you're looking for, what school you're planning to attend, or would you like to attend, and what kind of career field you're going into. You never can tell who might know of scholarships for people going into that area. I had a mother that was telling me a few years ago that she was in the grocery store, and she saw a neighbor of hers, and they started talking about her son Will, who was getting ready to go to Wake Forest. And she said, well, Will has been really busy trying to find scholarships. It's going to be very expensive to go to Wake Forest. So this neighbor was asking, well, what's he planning to go into? And she was telling him, and the lady said, well, my goodness, I have a friend who has a scholarship. He funds a scholarship for students going into that career field. So she connected them both, and this student got that scholarship, and it was a pretty big one. Other places, again, national scholarship sites, be very careful with these. You can find a lot of scholarships on them, but one thing that they do is they sell your name, and that might mean that you get some unsolicited emails or texts or other mail, or maybe even phone calls from colleges out there. They may be for-profit colleges, and these may not be the best fit for you for what you are thinking about going into. You see this scholarship site, scholarship.com, says, find college scholarships while colleges recruit you. And some of these colleges, again, may not be the best fit for you, and some of them may be very, very expensive. Another thing that you'll find on these sites is something you see down this site. It says, find student loans. And these are not your good federal student loans. These are not the loans you need to be that are trustworthy. Some of these come from very unscrupulous lenders, and they can raise their interest rates 4 times a year up to 18%. And again, if you have to get extra loan money, be sure to check out North Carolina Assist first, because the interest rates are probably going to be better for you. I certainly wouldn't want to be paying back a loan at 14, 15%. And I have met students through the years that this has happened to them. Some tips for private scholarships: researching the company or organization so that you understand what their goals and objectives are. In other words, know your audience. And if you can, if there's something that this particular organization does or stands for or believes in, maybe include something in that area in your essay if it asks you to write an essay. And if they do ask for an essay, ask if you can get previous winners' essays so that you can kind of see, what was it about this previous winner that made them choose them? And you can kind of see a pattern after a while about the types of students that certain organizations choose. Also, find out who's going to be reading or judging the applications. Most of your organizations have a small committee that looks at these scholarships, and then they choose a certain number of students to come back in and maybe have an interview. But if you know who's going to be doing that, if you know what kind of people are in this organization or the age groups of the people that are in this organization, you can kind of know how to write to them. Even if you're at a public high school, most of your high schools have a scholarship committee. And some of these committee members, you may not have even had them as a teacher, so they might not even know you. So be sure that you find out who's on the scholarship committee and make sure you introduce yourself to those people. Apply for lots of scholarships. Make sure you apply for the small ones as well as the larger ones. Because a lot of those smaller ones can add up to be very big ones. I was talking with a group this past year, a scholarship organization, and they had 5 $500 scholarships that were not awarded. So because nobody applied for them. Now, if you, and what that means is if they had just had one senior who had applied for all 5 of those, that senior could be $2,500 richer right now and would have that towards college. If you spend 80 hours applying for scholarships and you win $5,000, that's $62.50 an hour, and that's a whole lot more money than I make. If you're preparing your scholarship application, read and follow your directions. Also check to make sure that you're actually eligible for that scholarship. And also be sure you follow the deadlines. If it's a day after it's due, don't expect that anybody's going to look at that scholarship application. Some of these scholarships, they have hundreds of these. So the easiest thing for them to do is weed you out because you didn't read directions. If it asks for a picture, make sure you have a picture. If it asks you to be a minority, you make sure that you are, because it's so much easier for somebody just to pitch it in the trash and then go on to the next application than to get back in touch with you and say, oh, you forgot a picture. Oh, you forgot this. Or you didn't follow the directions for your deadlines. Checking your grammar and punctuation and your sentence structure. And then ask somebody to check it. And don't rely on spell check because, spell check, if you're using the word there and there, THEY, apostrophe RE and THEIR, sometimes, they all sound alike, but they can have a whole different meaning there. Complete your application in full. If the question doesn't apply, note it on the application. Otherwise, whoever's reading this might think that you deliberately chose to not answer something. Maybe you're hiding something. And if you're calling or emailing, make sure you use good manners, you use correct grammar, and make sure, especially if you're emailing, that you have a professional email account, something that sounds good for you. You don't want cute chick or things like that, because that sort of lets people know, hey, this person's not a really serious student here. When you're doing essays and personal statements, making sure you type. Not very many organizations still use paper copies of scholarship applications, but if they do, there are still a few out there. Type and then attach it to your form. I have been on scholarship committees before where you can't even read what the student has written, and if you can't read it, you're not going to strain your eyes trying to figure it out. You're just going to throw it in the trash. Try to engage the reader in the first sentence. Whatever you're writing about, making sure that people want to read the rest of that application or the rest of that essay. Using concrete details in events. Making a story out of it. People love a good story. I had a student a few years ago who was really he had this essay and he was trying so hard to sound like he was very knowledgeable, and it just droned on, and he had used every big word in the dictionary, and I wasn't even sure I could even get through the thing. And it was so dull and boring. And I finally just stopped and I said, well, I know that you're planning to go to Chapel Hill. What makes you want to go to Chapel Hill? And he said, well, I want to become a doctor one day. And I said, well, what do you want to study? He said, I want to study oncology. And I said, well, why do you want to study oncology? And he said, well, my dad died of cancer when I was 5, and it was a really bad time for us. And it really made an impact on my life. And I said, well, that's the story you need to tell. That's what you need to talk about here. So he completely scrapped his paper, and his first sentence read, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I heard my mother scream. Now, would you want to read the rest of that? I certainly did. And it was actually a really good essay when he was finished. the example I gave here is don't just say you're a leader, write about a life experience where you were a leader. And again, you could write about a time you failed at something. They want to know you when you're finished. And don't go in here and put a list of awards and accomplishments and activities. That gets awfully boring as well. And these are already on your resume. If writing is difficult, speak into a recorder. You can get apps for your phone. Now, good luck finding an app for your phone that you can record that actually understands a Southern accent. I'm talking about the recorders that actually write what you're saying while you're saying it. Anytime I've ever tried to use some of these, they really don't sound. They really come out saying things that I wasn't saying. Now, there's a place on CFNC if you have to do a personal statement. It's a thing in learning about yourself under the career section of CFNC called Do What You Are. And this is it's a Myers-Briggs, it's a personality test. And when you're all done, it will tell you about yourself. And if you have to write about yourself, or if you have to write about, or you have to tell about yourself, even if you're in an interview, about your greatest strengths, what's your greatest weaknesses, this gives you a list of things. If you get an interview, if they've looked at your application and they said, oh, wow, you're the best person for this, or we're going to interview 5 people for this, be sure that you get some sample questions from your counselor, or you can even go online. There are sample interview questions online too. And here's some common things that they ask: your background, your school activities, your volunteer work, what academics you're in, details about what colleges you've selected, what kind of plans you have, what are you going into, what kind of financial aid package have you gotten, if you know if you've gotten that yet, your personal values. But the important thing is to practice, practice, practice. You would not believe how much better students who have practiced do compared to students who are just answering questions on the fly. First impressions do count. That not only includes practicing for the questions, but also how you dress, your manners, all of those things count. I can't stress that enough here. And if you're nervous, your interviewer is kind of nervous too. You can ask some questions of the interviewer. What made you decide to do this scholarship? Tell me about last year's winners of this scholarship. Where did they end up in school? Or ask them about what made them join that organization, and what do they like about the organization. So that sort of breaks the ice for you as well, and it gets them talking. And when people are comfortable with you, then you make a whole lot better impression to them. If you need recommendation letters, using people who know you, and you can't use your parents or your family members because we all know they would say wonderful things about you, has to be people who are not related to you. Could be a band instructor, your coach, scout leader, your minister, your employer, other people like that. And giving people your resume. And if you had to write an essay, if possible, ask if they can include some information that you put in your essay. I'll give you an example of this. A few years ago, there was a wonderful young lady who had done, as kind of one of the things that she wanted to start. She had a family member who had cancer, and so she organized a group of her high school friends, and they did a Locks of Love drive, which is where everybody gets their hair cut from a certain place, and they give their hair for wigs to make for these cancer patients. And this particular student had written about her brother. I think it was a brother or some family member that had had cancer, and how, how strongly she felt about this Locks of Love. But she had her hairdresser write a recommendation letter. And I can't say it was the most well-written recommendation letter, but I can tell you it was the most heartfelt recommendation. And this was the hairdresser that all the girls had used to cut their hair off. And this lady had donated her time for this. And she talked about, the different girls that came in, and how amazed she was that they were these popular cheerleaders and everything, and doing this. And it was just a really good letter. And not a lot of people know how to write recommendation letters. They are really hard to write. And do know that there are some prototypes on the web that you can just say, give me examples of recommendation letters, scholarship recommendation letters, or college recommendation letters, or even job recommendation letters, and you can find those. And I have had students in the past who have said, well, listen, I'm going to write this recommendation letter, and you tweak it however you want to, put it in this envelope, and then just mail it off, or attach it to whatever you've got here. So if you have a person who's really afraid of writing recommendation letters, offer to help them with it. Give plenty of advance notice for anybody that's going to write these. Don't just expect to go in and say, can you write a recommendation letter this afternoon for me? And always, always thank the person with a note, or even a small gift, a jar of jelly with that note, or just something. And at the very least, acknowledge it in an email. Thanks for writing this. Thanks for taking that time. And if you get the scholarship, or you get the job, or whatever you're needing that recommendation for, then let the person know. I've written recommendation letters in the past, and I have no idea whether the student even got the scholarship, because nobody ever told me. And if that student came back to me today and said, could you write a recommendation letter for this new job that I've gotten now that I'm out of, or that I'm trying to get now that I'm out of college, I might have to say, well, I'm sorry, I never even found out whether you got a scholarship the last time. So keep on everybody's good graces with these. When you're doing your resume, your classes, of course, if highlight any classes that you did a special project, or you did especially well. You can also talk about your senior project if you're a senior. And if it's the first part of your senior year, you may only have, with your grades, you may only have as far as your junior year. But depending on when the time of year is that you're working on these scholarships, your clubs, your sports, your extracurricular activities. And this is a point where more is not always better. People like to see that you've had some leadership roles. And maybe that you started out as the secretary and you ended up being president of this club or this organization. That shows some progression, that you stuck with it. That tells people a lot of things about you, that you can stick to something. If you have some community activities or community service, make sure you show that this particular community service, that you had a passion, or that you've had some leadership roles in doing this. You don't have to be the one that comes up with all of these, but if you are the one who gets people together, and you might tell about how you marketed it in your school to get other people involved in these particular areas, that shows leadership is really important. And leadership's also important in your work. And it shows people that you have time management. You're able to balance a job, plus you're able to balance your high school and whatever else that you're doing. If you are a crew leader, say, I'm a crew leader at this particular fast food restaurant. That also shows leadership. Now, your top 10 list for your senior year. Looking at your college websites for their financial aid and scholarship deadlines. Make sure you don't forget those. and that you follow their instructions, talking with your school counselor about scholarships and applying for them, getting your RDS, that's your residency determination, completed before your applications, complete your FSA ID for your FAFSA, and filling out your FAFSA early. And you can do this anytime after October 1st, your senior year. Attending a financial aid workshop. We didn't talk a lot about financial aid here, but it's important that you understand how financial aid works. So if you see a workshop, especially one done by College Foundation, then you may want to attend that. I will caution you, there are some workshops that I see out there that are done by organizations that want you to pay for their services. So be careful about those. Know who's actually presenting those. Visit CFNC.org for financial literacy information. Staying organized, creating files for your scholarships. That's very important. And if you can start that early, saying, okay, in October, these are the ones due. In November, these are the ones due. December, here are the ones. And kind of keeping a calendar for those. And enjoy your last year of free laundry and home cooking. Now, for your junior year, staying on track academically. You don't want to slack up because it's almost over with here. You want those merit-based scholarships. Narrowing down the number of colleges you want to apply to, visiting those colleges. Review their scholarship application process. Review the cost of attendance at your colleges. What do they feel like the average student spends for those schools? And visit websites like FastWeb. You can visit and again, there are some scholarships out there for juniors, for sophomores, for freshmen. And if you can do this early and kind of, again, start keeping track of when these are due and what the qualifications are, and getting these qualifications while you are, before your senior year, then it's going to be helpful if they are just scholarships for seniors. Go to CFNC to look at scholarship information. And again, go to a financial aid workshop. Learn about other ways to pay for college, jobs, work study. Find out how your school counselor distributes scholarship information. Do they just put it on their website, or do they track down individual students and hand the scholarships to the students? I know some schools do that, so finding that out from your counselor. But the summer between your junior and senior year, spending it wisely. If you can research scholarships before your senior year, you're going to be ahead of the game. Make it almost a part-time job. Well, we finished with this for today, and since we don't have any questions right now, if you would like to get in touch with me, this is my information. You can also call College Foundation. We have a toll-free number, 866-866-2362. They can point you in the right direction in whatever way that you're going. Anything for planning, applying, and paying for college, College Foundation is there to help you. Thanks so much for attending the webinar today, and enjoy scholarship hunting.